A memorial near a concrete post for 18-year-old Michael Brown went up in flames early this morning, much to the dismay of residents at Canfield Green Apartments and protesters.
It's a very disrespectful to his mom, to his dad, and to him.
It's not clear how the fire near another memorial in the middle of the street on Canfield Drive started. However, some residents believe an arsonist is responsible.
It was clear that it was set with gasoline because a lot of that stuff was pretty wet. There was water on a lot of that stuff from the morning dew and what have you. There was no candles lit.
The shooting of an unarmed man in Ferguson, Missouri touched off a national debate about the use of body cameras by law enforcement. At the court would seem to be an excellent idea all around. Cops get to show what the bad guys are really doing in the heat of a moment, and police are being held to a proper standard of conduct. But in St. Louis, they don't see it that way. And at the same time, there is unrest again in Ferguson, threatening to blow the lid off a very tenuous peace. We head around the dial and welcome back author and syndicated radio host, a proud Black Tea Party conservative. Kevin Jackson joins us. Kevin, good to see you again.
Thanks a lot. Good to be here.
Is it not fair to say that certainly with the torching of the Mike Brown Memorial now, that the people in Ferguson have a reason to be upset because the police were out in force again last night? There was a line. Citizens were taunting them again. It simply just has re-energized everything and refocused it on the citizens because they still feel as if they're not being listened to. Well,
I mean, unless somebody's got video of the cop torching the Michael Brown memorial, I don't get it. There weren't that many people out there, and when it got torched, it brought about 200 people out there, was a report that I read. So to be honest with you, I think because it's losing traction, and I think this story is gonna ebb and flow for a little bit, but because right now it's losing traction, because there are many other things that people have their eyes on. I think that right now people are sort of looking to make a media spectacle out of it and hoping that it gets the attention, and Don Lemon comes back down and sets up camp.
Understood that there's going to be people who will use this for their own advantage. That happens absolutely in every issue that we ever talk about here. But again, fair to say that nothing really much has happened in Ferguson. I don't know what people really want to happen, what may, but don't you get the feeling, though, that maybe they're right when they say they've been abandoned a little bit?
Nah, they're not right. First of all, the law requires that they've convened the panel, the grand jury, and the first thing that they did was they extended the maximum amount of time that grand jury had to make the decision, and they did that for a reason. They wanted to make sure that everybody understood they're going to take this seriously, because to be honest with you, it's not a lot of time to get to all this evidence that they need. So they did the first thing that they should have done. But as far as the rest of this goes, I still think it's so overblown that Ferguson is wanting to make this some statement, and it's got Missouri on the map. I mean, I'm hearing about this story worldwide. I actually did an interview for Swiss radio on this story. So it's got the world's attention, and it's so mundane in comparison to most other things. And what you're going to find is that anytime that Ferguson's mentioned in the near future, you're going to get all kinds of people, the hangers-on, the B-list and C-list celebrities and people like that are going to try to glean on. Politicians like Antonio French are going to try to make hay. It wasn't even his district, and he was there, and he's wanting to make a run for mayor. So that's what you're going to get, and it's unfortunate because at the end of the, when it's all said and done, it's about the death, the unfortunate death of a kid who probably shouldn't have died had he used a little bit more common sense. And we'll find out what the cop side of the story is.
Speaking of the cops and their side of the story, I wanted to get your comment on this as well. There seems to be some tension in St. Louis between the police and the officers' union because they want the cops to wear body cameras. The union fires back, it's simply just too expensive, and some people see that as something of a just putting it off, basically, not wanting to have the body cameras. I'm curious to get your opinion on this because there's two sides to this. One, it certainly allows the cops to be able to see what the bad guys are up to. Two, it keeps the cops from doing anything illegal or immoral, if you will, and basically could make them better officers. What do you think?
Yeah, the cops don't have a problem with the body cameras per se. They have the bigger issue here, and I've spoken with a lot of the law enforcement leaders here, and their biggest issue is they've negotiated their salaries, and in many cases, I think that on average they're $20,000 to $25,000 paid less pay that these guys received to their comparative officers in other jurisdictions. So what they're saying is, you want us to, you're going to spend a few $1,000,000 on body cameras. What about our salaries? We're facing the same dangers as these other people, and they aren't being forced to wear cameras or anything. So how about we get our salaries in line? And I could argue for that. I mean, you make your choice on what you want to do for a living, and the price that the salary, so you decide on that.
Well, but here's the other side of this too. I mean, certainly the salaries are a part of it, but Jeff Rurda is with the St. Louis Police Officers Association. He says this gotcha discipline that we have with the dashboard cameras is what we'd be afraid of. So technically that statement says, hey, we're a little bit afraid of what actually gets taken, what gets put out on there on video. But there is a point to this. Sometimes that video is used incorrectly. It is used out of context. It is something the media grabs onto. But the gotcha discipline, I think when he says that might anger a few people and almost see as if they don't want to be taped.
I think there's a part of that, but I think the bigger part is it's a negotiation tactic. But let's take that step. The gotcha is that you've got a camera that's pointed at another, it's a stationary camera pointed in a single direction. Mm-hmm. And what happens is once you get out of frame, you don't know what is happening. But when you talk about, putting something on a person's body, then it becomes a different thing. So the majority of the cops that I've talked to, and I've talked to quite a few of them here locally, and mainly the leadership, they don't have a problem with that. In fact, most of them believe that it will validate their side of the argument in more cases than not. Let's face it, dash cam has certainly been the bane of a criminal's existence, because even when people are getting tested for drunk driving and things like that, they put you right in front of the camera. And in many cases, it's caught people just doing bad behavior, shooting at cops and doing things like that. And that's just in a single view. So I think cops see the value of it. I don't think there's going to be a big argument for it. And I think that in this particular case, it's more of a ploy to say, get us more money and we'll be more amenable.
All right, let's go ahead and spin then to the president. The attacks now on ISIS in the Middle East. In your opinion, did he get it right?
No, he's missing the boat there. He just came out today and said something to the effect that, you need to use force with these people, and dealing with these issues and dealing with terror. Well, what Martian landed inhabited his body? Because this has not been Obama's take on this. He's talked about sitting down and negotiating with terrorists. You remember that, and he got ridiculed. This was back in 2008, and that's not changed. He still believes in appeasement. And let's face it, we dragged him into what he's not declaring a war. But, when I check, guys, let me tell you, when you're dropping bombs on people and you're planning and strategizing and you're working with coalitions, that by definition to me is a war.
Do you think that we still, in many ways here in America, just sort of discount what might happen here? Because we've talked about it here on the show much today. We've had the strategists talk to us, tell us that you still have to be concerned about something here, whether it's ISIS, whether it's some other form of Islamic radicalism or whatever. We in America need to be very concerned right now as to what might happen. Border security has got to be huge, especially now.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think whoever your expert was, they nailed it as well. Look, something is brewing. The only thing that's really stopped the terrorists really is two things. One is the Second Amendment and the fact that there are lots of Americans who are armed and ready to go to battle. And the second part is when they initiate this war, this jihad inside of America, you want to talk about some racial profiling that's going to happen. And there's going to be some good old boys and some not good old boys that are going to be just terrorizing the Muslim population, and will feel justified in doing so. So they realize that when they start this war inside of America, it's not going to be like doing something inside of Europe or inside of Israel. It's going to be a real war. And that's what's prevented it so far. And the idea that we're still talking about disarming Americans, and while we're, by the way, arming the moderate terrorists in order to fight these guys, I think has got a lot of Americans saying Barack Obama really doesn't quite understand strategy.
45 seconds. The president steps out of Marine One, has his tea in his hand, and gives a very casual salute to the Marine Guard who was there. By the way, hashtag latte salute is now a thing, and actually it wasn't a latte, it was chai. What's your take on all this? Much ado about nothing?
Disrespect. It shows the pathology of Barack Obama and his disdain for the military and the things and traditions that we hold near and dear. And in the end, you could say it's much ado about nothing, but the guy who calls himself the commander-in-chief is supposed to salute.
He is indeed supposed to be that, and I can tell you by talking to a couple of military friends and getting through some emails within the last 18 hours or so, I haven't found one in the military who calls it much ado about nothing. They are rather angry about it one way or another. So let's make sure, let's put it hashtag chai salute. Let's get it right, okay, so that it's not just a latte salute next time. Kevin Jackson, there you go. Kevin Jackson, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
All right, later on this hour, is there a second wave of illegals heading for the American southwest border? And what is any South American government doing to stop it? After the break, the Money Master. Walmart wants to control your life. Every single facet of your existence is what Walmart wants under their thumb. And they might just have a way to do it now because they're adding a brand new service. Let's see what Wall Street has to say about that and so much more when we continue on MidPoint, where we question everything.